Good evening. Welcome to the Wellesley Free Library. It was a glorious day. Hope you all got out. My name is Kathy Betcher. As always, we have information about our upcoming programs on the table to your right. So please avail yourselves to them. Sign up for our monthly e-newsletter, and you may also sign up for reminders that we'll send to you via email approximately 2 days before an event. Our guests also have a lovely table set up here this evening, so please take a look at it if you haven't already done so. Also, like we do at all our programs, we have our little feedback forms out. So if you would like, give us your feedback about this event tonight, and let us know what other programs you'd like to see here at your library. I also wanted just a reminder, on April 22nd, we will have a program entitled Community Conservation. Information on that is on the table and on the website. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Dan Brailman, Marilyn Brailman, and Alan French. Dan and his colleagues focus on the preservation of nature and protection of resources, shining a spotlight on the individuals, groups, and organizations that are making a difference every day and telling their stories in hope of getting more people interested in caring for the environment. Please join me in welcoming the E-Awakening team. Welcome, folks. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good evening, and thank you for coming tonight for our multimedia presentation on the Bay Circuit Trail and the environment. I'm Marilyn Brailman, one half of e-awakening.com. My husband Dan and I, we produce environmental videos where we shine a spotlight on people, groups, and organizations that are doing positive things for the environment. Tonight, Dan is going to be showing some clips from his hike of the Bay Circuit Trail and talking about it in relation to the environment. And Al French, a founder, and he was the executive director of the Bay Circuit Alliance from 1992 to 2012. He's been involved with the trail for well over 25 years. He's going to be talking about his experiences. And at the end of our presentation, Denny Narconi will be talking about some of the local trails in the area. So Dan also writes and performs his own original music for all of our videos. And we'd like to start tonight's presentation with a song he wrote especially for the Bay Circuit Trail. It's called Trail Town.
Thank you, ma'am. I've been hiking all day out on the trail. I'm pretty tired, but I'm inspired. I've been seeing the sights, earthly delights, and it's all right. Now the time comes around, and I found Trail Town. The people are friendly, they're glad to see me. I think I'll stay right here in this cool breeze, enjoying a tasty freeze on an outdoor patio. No, I don't think I'll get this to go. I think I'll stay for a while in this trail town. On the Bay Circuit Trail, there's a trail town. Is cast in Wellesley, Mass. Trail Town. Thank you so much. Thank you. Wellesley. Is my microphone going in now?
Sorry.
Do you want me to try something, a different one? Yeah, it's getting so loud though. Do you think that, okay, that's good. The Bay Circuit Trail is our gateway back to nature, right here in our own backyard. We have a map, okay? Merrill needs to put up. Technology, I was just talking about that, right? We have a map of the entire Bay Circuit Trail, all 200 plus miles of it. And it starts up in the north at Plum Island. And over here at Ipswich Bay is another way to start. And it goes south. Okay. It just... All right. We have here. Go over here. The outer trail is the trail that I took. The inner trail is the trail, is you can see that it's not complete here. It's a dotted line. And as it goes south, there's two ways to go. Kingston Bay. I know. It's cutting out. It's not the distance of the mic. Yeah. Are we going to be able to testing one? Okay. Yep. Are we going to be able to get the video? Okay, good. Okay. Let me tell you why I hiked the Bay Circuit Trail. 9 years ago, we created our website, e-awakening.com. 7 years ago, I quit my job as a TV news cameraman in Boston. And that's when Merrill came up to me and said, you've always wanted to hike the New England section you always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. If you hike the New England section of the Appalachian Trail, I'll be your support person. 6 years ago, we created a documentary, a 1-hour documentary called The Mountain Song about that hike. In 2013, I was thinking, what could we do that was different? And I was reading in an AMC magazine that the Bay Circuit Trail was within reach of millions of people right in their own backyard. It was at the same time that I was reading this book called Blessed Unrest. This book, Blessed Unrest, by Paul Hawkins. And this is about the biggest movement ever, the environmental movement, and no one saw it coming. So I thought, why not make my hike of the Bay Circuit Trail a search for environmental heroes? We produced 22 separate segments of the Bay Circuit Trail hike. And Marilyn and I hiked 22 separate days, and we produced 22 separate segments of the Bay Circuit Trail hike. Let's join the adventure crew on the Bay Circuit Trail.
The Bay Circuit Trail arcs around Boston, going through 37 communities. Follow the white blazes, up hills, through wetlands, and across estuaries.
There's a nice interesting old trail on the other side of this valley.
It's a network of people saving open space, protecting the land, and preserving its beauty for future generations. And after over a century of work, everything is coming together. It's time to take a hike and enjoy this environmental wonder. The Bay Circuit Trail is fun, it's educational, and it's now. Check out the Bay Circuit Alliance website, baycircuit.org. And see all the segments of e-awakening.com series featuring the Bay Circuit Trail. 'Cause we're all connected by the trail, closer to nature, hill and dale. 'Cause we're the adventure crew, that's me and you.
Now, I can still picture the Bay Circuit Trail in my mind. The red-tailed hawk that landed 20 feet above me in the tree, raising its talon as if into a fist, and a deer munching on vegetation and popping its head up. We have a map that shows you day 5 of my hike. We started off in the J.C. Phillips Sanctuary, over into the Boxford State Forest, along some roads, conservation land, into the Harold Parker State Forest, and up to the Mary French Reservation, where I met Al French for the first time. Creating the trail wasn't easy, and it didn't come out like it was dreamed to be. One man who knew the trials and tribulations of creating a trail was Benton Mackay. Benton Mackay's the guy who came up with the idea for the Appalachian Trail. His dream for the Bay Circuit Trail was a 2-mile wide swath of green arcing around the entire city of Boston. Benton Mackay was a true environmental hero. And there are heroes alive and well around us today. And we're going to meet one of our contemporary heroes. But first, we're going to see some of the sights and hear some of the sounds along the way.
A wide trail and open forest greet me for this beautifully cool morning on the Bay Circuit. Amazed to see this creature hovering in front of me like a tiny helicopter, a hoverfly. It's hard to miss this scarlet tanager doing something like a morning dance just above me in the trees. It seems to me it's grooming, its feathers vibrating, a very special moment. Then it's by a dangling leaf to a bog, a swampy area, a concert of birds singing, frogs croaking, nature at its finest. Glorious bright blue skies and the sun. Today is very special because I'm meeting with a man that I've heard so much about.
If it weren't for Alan French, it wouldn't be a Bay Circuit Trail. He's not good at saying no to it.
But who is this man walking through the wetlands with a shopping bag in hand? And what got him started on reviving the dream of the Bay Circuit Trail? Simply by going to a meeting at the Appalachian Mountain Club's Boston headquarters.
He had a store, so he was kind of the corporate world, or he was representing the corporate world. And they were talking about doing a trek, and he asked them, well, on this trek, do you have any need for an old geezer like me? That would put it.
And what was Al's secret for galvanizing the passions of so many people, waiting for a leader to tie it all together, working at the grassroots?
What that really did was inspire people to get really interested in the Bay Circuit. A lot of people volunteered. And the whole notion that Al came up with, which I think was his genius, was this is a bottoms-up thing. Find people who are interested in every community. And you let them work out their part. You get them together so they don't need the town board.
State was running it sort of as a zoning question where they tried to get all the towns in the Bay Circuit to do their master planning for buying of land and so forth. The Park Service said, get out there, get the people that will use the land, then they'll vote for it. That's how you drive home. It wasn't my idea, but I bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Our next speaker is Al French, and he's been involved with the trail for well over 25 years. He's going to talk about his experiences and give us a brief history of the Bay Circuit Trail.
Thanks, Mary. I think I'm wired. Okay, good. It's always a surprise to Dan in Maryland. I thought before I came it was 30. It turns out it's 35 presentations we've made in the last couple of years. Each time when I get my bit piece, it's always a little new. So Dan, and as well as you in Maryland, don't have any idea what I'm going to say, except it's too long, but anyway, I'll do my best. The history and experience. The experiences will come later, and I'm going to try and capsule 100 years of history of the Bay Circuit program in less than 5 minutes. So it's not an easy task. I keep trying, and maybe I'll get there at some point. But what I'd like you folks to take with you as far as the history, after you see the rest of the videos and the presentation, there's just a few points. The Bay Circuit is one, if not the earliest attempt of our society in the Boston area to cope with anticipated population growth in the Boston area through formal planning. That was its genesis in 1929 through the 30s. In the interim, you all are aware there was World War, there was Depression. A lot of things made it difficult to continue the process. The hallmarks of the project, though, among them were regional planning, formal regional planning at the state level. It was not grassroots. The concept was to protect land through zoning, state zoning. And it was dealing with, at that point, a 100-mile corridor around Boston, and the user population was Boston's population, not the suburbs. The suburbs then, in the 30s, was farmland, and that was the concept. Keep it either to be farmland or, worse, keep it from being developed by acquiring parks and open space. Until the late 80s, that was the objective. A trail was not part of the program. But in the late 80s, beginning in 1992 or thereabouts, the strategy was changed. And as the video implies, at the suggestion of the federal Park Service people who had experience with these regional planning things, and said, if people use the land, they'll vote for it. Simple as that. And I did buy it. It was my idea. So from then on, that was the governing strategy. Use the trail, recreational trail, surrounding Boston as a constituency builder to get people to adapt. And so by the year 2000, the trail was well on its way to completion. By 2012, it was time for Al to turn over the leadership of the program to a more permanent institutional relationship, and I did. So I haven't been formally involved in the program since 2012 when I gave up my leadership. Today, under the stewardship and management of the Appalachian Mountain Club, the trail is flourishing, and also it has to be celebrated that during the establishment of the trail, a lot of land protection did happen. Over 4,000 acres have been added to the corridor and to the Commonwealth's Boston area resources. Something like a 2,000-acre cranberry bog that was threatened with the development is now part of the state's Fish and Wildlife. It's a beautiful place to go, and I strongly would urge you to consider visiting it. It's in Pembroke and Hanson. It's now the Burridge Pond Wildlife Management Area. Gorgeous. At the time when I became involved, it was a dream that maybe the trail could go through this 100-mile cedar swamp, the Great Cedar Swamp in the area. And that's just a sample. Okay, so that's what I would say the history, and now the experience from me personally. And that's, I would say, a good news, bad news story. The good news I've already talked about. The success, I believe, not due to my doing, but due to hundreds of volunteers. It would take too much time, but before I've tried to explain the process that we went through. Roughly 10 to 15 miles a year of trail, working at the local grassroots area, but it's too much detail. If anybody's interested, I can get back to it. But what it meant to me was something in my life that could never really be replaced. 25 years of getting to know people like Denny Nakoni, one of the hundreds of people, throughout 50 towns or more, is just priceless from my standpoint. And I could never replace it. I was joined and supported by a wonderful partner, Mary French, who died right after 9/11, actually, so, but was very much a supporter of the concept and the actuality. However, the bad news is this. 2 examples. Today, in the last 2 weeks, I've experiencing 2 examples of what we're faced with. And they have to do with the 1 hour I spent getting here from Andover, Mass, at commuter time on Route 16 and 128. And these 2 examples whereby within the last month, a 30-acre section of forest in the town of Holbrook, Massachusetts, which is right on the edge of the Bay Circuit, has been auctioned off and will become high-rise, 5-story condominiums, probably. The highest elevation left in the Bay Circuit corridor, actually between 128 in Sharon, is Rattlesnake Hill, 300 or 400 acres of from which you can see Boston, particularly in the winter when the leaves are off, is in this holding area where there's an owner who is trying to develop it. All that stands between it being developed intensively is a committed group of volunteers in Sharon. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be at a potluck supper where the team of people in Sharon has been just waiting to try and cope with the number of developments. Those are just 2 examples. So, we have devastated the forest, metropolitanized the village, and metro slummed the wayside. What can be done? That's kind of stilted language, isn't it? It's stilted because it's not my words. These words were written in the 30s. We aren't even sure who wrote them, but I have them documented. And they were either Charles Eliot II or Benton Mackay or somebody working with him. There's a lot of work to be done on the Bay Circuit, even though it's been a successful trail, and I'm proud of the achievements of hundreds of us. So that's the bad news. And with that, I will turn it back to Dan and Merrill. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Al French. You know, it's been really hard for me to keep up with Al. Al's 86 years young, and he has been an inspiration to me in Maryland and to many people because he's been fighting for open space, and I don't even like the word open space because that could be a parking lot. But I mean, I'm talking about wildlands and forests, and Al was talking about our beloved Holbrook Forest next door to us. And you know, Al's been working to try to help people from urban areas get out on trails to connect to the Bay Circuit Trail, like a spoke of a wheel, a trail that Denny's been working on to try to help the people of Boston access these trails. And Al's been working with the people of Lawrence to try to help them access trails. And as he said, he's helped us to try to save the Holbrook Town Forest and Rattlesnake Hill. So I just, you know, can't say enough good about Al. And I'll just talk about my hike again, going back to day 12. This is the closest area to the Bay Circuit Trail here in Wellesley. The Ashland Town Forest is where I started out, and I went down through some roads and then along some housing developments out through the side of a house a couple times by, an easement along people's houses, and down into the Ashland downtown. We're going to see a little of that in the next video. All along the Bay Circuit Trail, I experienced the beauty and I felt the restorative healing powers of nature. One of the reasons that I did this hike, and Marilyn and I and Al are doing this work, is to bring attention to the environment and how precious our wildlands are. And so let's take a hike through Ashland.
It's time to continue our hike into the Ashland Town Forest. This map charts our course, and there are hand-painted blazes. It's great to be in the woods again. We travel along a path and over a bridge, and something I wasn't expecting, a fire hydrant. Back on roads and through this development, I searched for the trail. Where is it? The map says it's here. I circle a fenced-in area on the edge of these woods, looking at all the possibilities. Then I see it on the side nearest to home, the blaze strapped to an anchor fence. It follows along the side of this home through these weeds, by the DPW yard and a gravel road with tire ruts. Then we see a left turn blaze that takes us alongside someone's yard. More roads take us back to the trail. We are hiking along the Sudbury River, getting peeks of lily pads through the leaves. Coming out to a road, a patriotic roof displays red, white, and blue. We see the warning signs of mercury as Canadian geese bask in the warm summer sun. And a man is fishing.
I grew up in New York City, so New York City is a concrete jungle. Central Park was my sanctuary growing up. It was, the largest green space in Manhattan. And when I moved out to the suburbs, I realized that there's green space all around us, and this is just such a gem. However, it doesn't stay green space forever. And unless people are actively doing something to protect it, it could easily get turned into parking lots or housing developments.
A little more of the Riverwalk takes us to Ashland's downtown. The clock says 2:10. But I lost my watch on another adventure hiking the New England portion of the Appalachian Trail. So for me, this whole hike is timeless. There are painted blazes on the light pole in front of this market. I head down Homer Road into Wildwood Cemetery, where a marble door proclaims its age. I like the painted blazes, which tell my feet which way to go. Ashland is well marked. All these poles have painted white blazes. Passing through a small wetland, it is comforting to know that there are people protecting these spaces.
Thanks to environmental heroes like Beth Rosenblum and the Ashland Open Space Committee, there has been land protected. On the fourth day of my hike, I hiked through the Willowdale State Forest, up into the Cleveland Farm State Forest, the Georgetown Raleigh State Forest, and then along roads into Boxford Center and ending up in the Boxford State Forest. And Boxford's where I met an amazing environmental hero, Nancy Merrill. This is an inspirational story about how a town came together to protect green space.
They had 46 acres on Covey's Pond, which is a beautiful pond in West Oxford. We had been working in that area in West Oxford to protect a number of fossils.
And it wasn't easy. It took commitment, an investment of time and tenacity, a relentless perseverance.
And then as development came in, one of us would sit at the planning board meetings, lobbying for trails through the subdivisions.
Nancy Merrill has worked for many, many years, leading the charge to save land for trails and open space. Today she takes us on a tour of Hovey's Pond. Saving this place became a dramatic race against time.
When they finally got a developer to sign on this purchase and sale agreement, that started the days ticking away. The town had 120 days to come up with the money, and then another 30 days to close the deal.
This beautiful Keystone property almost became prime real estate. But generous people put their money on the line to save this jewel for the people's enjoyment.
The BT Board wanted to raise a lot of private donations in order to help the town feel that this is a good parcel of land to protect. We raised over $500,000 in about a month's time.
And the town closed the deal with another $500,000, an astronomical feat.
This is a hemlock forest.
Through Nancy's leadership and pioneering spirit, in the days of modern red tape and legally dotting every I and crossing every T, Boxford has saved a wonderful area for the public's recreation.
Now, I think that's an amazing story. And sometimes all it takes is one environmental hero to lead the way. On day 13 of my hike, I hiked through a lot of green space, as you can see. I started out on some roads by a farm in a suburban development, and then all of a sudden I hit all this green, this narrow, thin corridor of green that goes all the way down into the Rocky Narrows Reservation. And the Rocky Narrows Reservation is a beautiful place. It's spectacular. Now, I saw a lot of beauty on the hike, and sometimes I even felt like I was in the wilderness. But I also saw a lot of threats to not only the trail, but also to our environment. I'm concerned about the health of our forests and the ever-expanding encroachment of development into our beautiful, wild, pristine places. In Sherburne, they're working really hard to keep their town green. Let's take a hike to Sherburne.
We're working with the town to get some general permits to do town maintenance work.
Chris Tallman is the president of the Sherburne Forest and Trail Association, and he also moved to Sherburne for the open space. He's a civil engineer and is certified in what he calls green engineering development.
It's development, it's growth, but it's, I think it's more referred to as smart growth and directed development, where you center where you want development and you try and preserve the open space, because once the open space is gone, it's pretty much impossible to get back. This is a section of the Bay Circuit Trail within Sherburne.
At Chris's computer, we did a virtual tour of the town, the trails, and all the development around Sherburne.
Where the downtown framing area and the development and pavement, where that's in Sherburne, you can see mostly green. We can zoom in further. You can see there's still a lot of open space. You can see where the houses are, some of the bigger farms. There's a new development just across the town line into Ashland, a big residential subdivision.
And although development is a huge threat to open space and forests, for Chris it's also about connecting neighborhoods and neighbors.
A big piece for me is also connections between neighborhoods. I love being able to get out from my house and get to places and not have to drive. Some days I want to drive and that's great, but there are days I'd like to be able to walk to the center of town and go to Seaman Frosties for an ice cream. And I don't think I should have to drive to get there. So we're building trail connections between neighborhoods that sort of links the neighborhoods and links the open space.
Cutting edge technology.
Can we get from the neighborhood here to the neighborhood here?
And return to the ageless values that seem to be imbued in that human. How do we find a way to use our resources wisely and for the common good?
If you live in your house and you travel everywhere in your car, you don't really interact with folks. You're in your own little world. If you walk somewhere or bike somewhere or ride a horse somewhere, you're going to meet other people out there, you're going to talk to them, which means you know the people in your neighborhood better, you know the people in your community better. Your woods.
All this green, surrounded by all this tar and concrete. As I entered the Rocky Narrows Reservation, with its trails and fields. Grasshoppers are flying above. A rugged climb and ledges remind me of the Appalachian Trail. Then on top of King Philip's Overlook, with an elevation of 260 feet, there are views that any wilderness would love to be compared to. Hiking out onto Route 27, I marvel at the primitive beauty of the Charles River. Two kayakers paddle peacefully. Water reflects the sights, sounds, and the feelings of companionship with nature. Old Route 27 harkens to a simpler time. It cracks as the earth slowly regains itself. We are in Medfield now, on a hill, a large round mushroom underfoot. The scene of rugged timelessness, and a black crow proclaims his right to the earth. And I am welcome back to the world of humans.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for picking me up, dropping me off, bringing those cool drinks and snacks. You know I couldn't have done it without you. This next clip is what is happening and what continues to happen when we don't protect our beautiful, pristine wild places.
We entered Sudbury Conservation Land and then Framingham Conservation Land and squeezed through an easement between private property. This is where I'm surprised to see construction. A brand new home sprouting up in these woods, and we find others on both sides. And here, what I'm calling a $1 million view. The soil is disturbed, and it's clear we are not welcome to venture off the trail.
And now we have an example of what environmental heroes can do, the Fowlers of Easton. And we learned that the key to conservation is education, environmental education.
As the Fowlers enjoy walking the conservation land just behind their backyard, they fill us in on how important environmental education is. Children that learned long ago to love the land have stood to protect it, doing whatever it takes to let nature be nature.
It's bred an ethic in the community of open space protection and appreciation of nature and the connection between the synergy between man and nature. So that's really done a lot for expanding the acquisition program.
So back when the Earth was first seen from space, when Rachel Carson introduced the idea of a silent spring, and the first Earth Days were just being celebrated, Easton caught the fever and did something about it.
Now it's 50 years, 60 years later, and you see that in second and third generation of people that come to town meeting, and when issues have to do with the protection of open space, that's an inner-bred thing. People remember, you guys can't, summer camp down at Wheaton Farm, and I remember how special it was for me.
The Fowlers were so excited to show us the conservation land that their town's been able to save. You can see the conservation parcels in this map. The greens and the blues, those are all conservation parcels that the town of Easton saved. And as Jim Fowler said in the last video, Easton has bred an ethic through environmental education. Investing in the future is teaching the children. Jen Cummings tells us why.
About all different forms of environmental awareness and education. Our teachers really specialize in working with the natural world and giving an appreciation of what the natural world gives to us and why it's important to protect it, and also the animals, the resources that are in the natural world.
Jen Cummings is the executive director of the Natural Resources Trust of Easton. She feeds some of the attractions here at Sheep's Pasture. This is just one of NRT's many parcels of land, preserving open space, rustic landscapes, and the educational opportunities that the outdoors has offered countless generations of children.
When we're working with children, we're really working for the future, because if we can interest children in the natural world, it's so important, because in the future we need people to continue to be interested and invested in protecting the natural world and the environment.
The Bay Circuit Trail is our gateway back to nature. but we have to use the gate. Richard Louv wrote a book, Last Child in the Woods. He says that most of our children today have a disorder, NDD, nature deficit disorder. And I quote Richard Louv from his book, Last Child in the Woods. Lacking direct experience with nature, children begin to associate it with fear and apocalypse, not joy and wonder. Now, I didn't see many families along the trail, but one experience that I did have was off in the distance, I heard these squeals of joy and laughter. And then all of a sudden, two little children come running by, looking at everything. They were so excited. And standing behind them were their parents with these big smiles on their faces because they were experiencing that very same joy. So we have this great trail, this gateway back to nature. And we need to help get more people on the trails and out into nature, adults and children, so that we can learn how to keep our environment healthy. In our next clip, we're going to see how the Appalachian Mountain Club is improving the trail.
There are several roads to walk down. Where is it? Then at Round Table Road, I encountered one of the biggest navigational challenges of my hike.
Well, I'm guessing not too many people have come down this trail. Because right in front of me is this giant spider right in the middle of the trail.
Hard to believe in this small section of woods. I feel like I'm getting lost.
Blaze told me to go straight ahead now. It's hard to tell. This is really a trail. Doesn't look like it. I think I could get lost in here.
It becomes a bit of a bushwhack.
Okay, I'm back on the trail. Let's see if it can pan out for me. This is a really tough trail to follow. Really tough.
And I struggled to find my way to Old Pond. Little did I know that nearly a year later, I'd be documenting a trail crew that is making this trail much easier to navigate.
AMC has become a leading partner of the Bay Circuit Alliance, and with that have brought our long history of engaging volunteers in the stewardship of trails to train them in those skills so they're confident and competent in keeping the trail sustainable so that they're there and inviting and appealing for all sorts of users.
Bay Circuit trails like logo, tag, this is going to go up, possibly running across the road there.
On a day of service, Blue Cross Blue Shield employees are trained by the AMC in preparation to improve this section of trail. But there are all kinds of different people and reasons to get involved.
By becoming involved in trail work, people often graduate to that level by saying, I've been hiking these trails for forever and I want to get involved. Or maybe they like building, like doing hard labor, and that's kind of with trail work. You're getting out, you're getting dirty, and you're working hard, but by doing that, you're forging a new relationship and new connections with the place and giving back to the community for our neighbors, our friends from other states who are coming to hike the Bay Circuit Trail.
We have one more video clip for you, and it really doesn't need an explanation, except to say that we desperately need more environmental heroes. The plants, the animals, the earth needs more environmental heroes. We need more stories about environmental heroes. And that's why Marilyn and I have been doing this work, is because we believe that the more stories there are out there about environmental heroes, the more people will want to become environmental heroes. The Bay Circuit Trail, all trails really, could be our gateway back to nature. The Bay Circuit Trail is a golden opportunity.
Merrill has been behind the scenes, and as a person whose glass is half full, she was instrumental in keeping this video positive, keeping me from sermonizing and preaching about the dark side of the human impacts we have perpetrated on this planet. Marilyn reflects on the memories that she takes away from this experience.
We talked to a lot of people along the trail, so I get to meet a lot of people, hear a lot of stories, find out a lot about what people are doing. And for me, this one is particularly important because I'm a big proponent of knowing what we have in our own backyards.
And what a backyard it is. 37 communities of trails, woods, forests, rivers, and streams. Bogs, wetlands, ponds, and all the insects, the birds, and the animals. And within this journey, we've uncovered a true and noble side of human nature. People at their best.
We discovered that we have some gems and some treasures and a lot of people that are out there protecting what we have and procuring more of the open space that is still available and saving it so that we have it for future generations.
We have mined our backyards for heroes, not from the past, but alive and living now, doing the unsung work that will only be noticed more and more as the years go by. The Bay Circuit Trail could have perished. Our little backyard could have been endless chains of development. But they courageously fought on, and that is why we have this treasure.
It's a real gem. We have something really incredible, and it crosses 200 miles of our own state. And a lot of people, I know I'm repeating myself, but a lot of people have gone to a lot of work, spending some of them a good chunk of their lives working on this.
We produced this video to find environmental heroes, people taking action to care for the earth. The bay is nearly silent as a cold, damp chill is accompanied by drops of rain. Deep red and a lifeless color infiltrates the green. There were fields of flowers then, and a birdhouse waiting for a tenant. A hawk searched in the sky for something to eat. It was a beautiful sight. Finally, we walked the last few feet of an amazing achievement, a 200-mile trail kept alive by sheer guts and determination. Together, our glass is full. There is always hope. This has been a tale about the keepers of the flame, those who chose to do battle with apathy and neglect. We hope that this is a tale of a great awakening. This is a tale of a 200-mile trail and all of the heroes called to the cause. We're taking a walk, we're living the talk, paying respect to the swamps and bogs. The Bay Circuit Trail, the Bay Circuit Trail.
Tonight we've showed you clips from the Bay Circuit Trail videos, and if you'd like to see them in their entirety, you can see them on our website, e-awakening.com. And on the table we do have business cards, and they have our website address on them. I'd like to tell you about some other aids that are available to you for hiking the Bay Circuit Trail. One is AMC's interactive map, and that can be found on the website baycircuit.org. And also on that website, they have maps that you can print. And something that Dan found very useful in his hike were the descriptions, and those can also be printed from that same website, baycircuit.org. And on the table, we have the maps and descriptions that Dan used on his hike, and you can look at those as examples. We'd like to close this portion of the presentation with another song. Happens to be one of my favorites because I feel it puts into music what we saw in the last video. It's called One.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's not so much about who you are. It's more about who you become. In the face of the storm, we find some peace, like the eye in the middle. We become one. We find our trail, a quiet path, reflects the magnitude. We cannot fail. Let's do the math. In the many there is solitude. The trails are our gateway back to Mother Earth. We can learn to fix her, make her what she's worth. The children are the future. They are what we teach. Let's show them a brand new world that's within their reach. Let's get out on the trail and feel the joy. Earth's community, trees, rocks, flowers, and soil. Let's join the adventure crew on the Bay Circuit Trail. When we come together, we cannot fail. We cannot fail when we come together as one. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
And now I'd like to ask Denny Nakoni to come up and tell us what's happening with the trails right around here. Thanks, Denny.
So I'd like to thank, first of all, Dan and Marilyn for this wonderful presentation. I hope it inspires all of you to get out there and hike the Bay Circuit Trail. I'd also like to thank Al French, who is my friend, my colleague, my mentor. He has done an amazing job of putting together the Bay Circuit Trail, and through his dedication and hard work, this trail has really been a regional asset to recreational hiking. When I got involved with the Wellesley Trails Committee, I also discovered the Bay Circuit Alliance. And when I joined it, Al French came up to me and said, Denny, I got an idea for you. I'd like you to put in a trail that's a spur that goes from the Bay Circuit Trail into the communities in toward Boston, and then finally a trail that goes into Boston. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a fun thing to do. Little did I know that it would take me 7 years to put a 16-mile trail in place. So that gives you a better idea and a picture of what Al French accomplished with 254 miles of trail just surrounding Boston. The trail I was referring to is the Charles River Link. This is a trail that starts at the Medfield State Hospital, goes along the Charles River, and as an example of the concept of the Bay Circuit Trail, it interconnects open space. So it goes through the Medfield State Forest and into the trustees of reservation lands of Chase Woodlands and Peters Reservation and Pegan Hill. It goes through the Mumford Wildlife Forest in Natick that's run by the New England Forestry Foundation, and then also through the I guess that was the last one, actually. But then it gets over to the Wobbin Arches in Wellesley, and it follows the Sudbury Trail and also the Charles River Trail up to the Corley Dam. That's where it interfaces with the trail that goes into Boston. It's a proposed trail at this point, and there's still a gap there. The Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR, started a path from Boston out to Waltham, and that was around the time when I started the Charles River Link. And they continued that trail into Newton, and now it ends along Commonwealth Avenue. So there's a gap now between Wellesley and Commonwealth Avenue that's being worked on a regional type basis. Wellesley has given their support to the trail, but it's mainly Newton that's working on it. It's also the Newton Conservancy also is working on it. The Riverside developer who's putting in additional housing and retail and parking and so forth into the MBTA station. They're working on it. And also the Solomon Foundation that Herb Nolan also works for. So there's a lot of hope that we'll close that gap and we'll finally have a trail that actually goes into Boston. I have information about the Charles River Link over in the table there. There's some trail guides over there and flyers. Once again, this is a trail that can be walked in its entirety, but it also can be walked piecemeal-wise. If you're just interested in going to the different reservations, then it gives you directions so that you can go to the trails of those reservations. And it's all marked trails so that you can that you won't get lost and you can be able to interconnect between these open space areas. I heard one interesting hike that was done by someone, second-handed, but I think it's true, that this guy started at the Corley Dam. He backpacked with his inflatable kayak all the way to the Medfield State Hospital, 16 miles, put it in the water, and paddled back down to the Corley Dam on the Charles River. So I think that's a pretty good story. And I think that it really emphasizes the fact that there are just many ways of getting around to different places, walking, kayaking, and riding your mountain bike or horseback riding, and it sort of fits in with the concept of the Bay Circuit Trail. So thanks for coming tonight, and turn it back to Dan.
Thank you, Denny. Thank you so much.
And we'd like to thank the Wellesley Library for having us here tonight, and I'd especially like to thank Kathy Betcher, I hope I said it right, for all the help that she gave us in setting this up and getting the word out about it. And if anybody, we'd also, most importantly, like to thank all of you environmental heroes who came out tonight for this presentation.
Yes.
And if any of you have questions, I'm sure Al, Dan, Denny, or I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes?
Favorite stretches?
Favorite stretches? Anything that was woods. I love the woods. Well, Rocky Narrows was great. There was really nice places interspersed throughout the whole trail. Rocky Narrows, it's so hard for me to really pick out any one that I liked better than any other. But I would say Rocky Narrows was one of them up there. Yes?
Least favorite stretch?
Least favorite was that video you saw. And that was in Easton, but they fixed that trail, and it was pretty amazing. Some parts of the trail don't get a lot of use, so that's when they get overgrown. It's a lot of work to keep these trails up, as Denny can attest to and as Al can. Yes?
Well, you clearly had trouble on that one stretch at Easton. Were there some areas along the trail where you decided you had to turn back and retrace your steps and
Yeah, there were a couple of places. That place, I mean, I retraced my steps several times. A couple of times I got off the trail, so I wasn't really on it. There was a couple other places. There was one where I had to go around, and I can't remember where it was, but I had to go around this meadow, and I kept going around. I went around it twice. It was a huge meadow, so it was like almost a mile around the whole thing. And then finally I saw this little space in the trees, and it was that was the trail, and it wasn't even marked, so I looked through there and I saw, where was that?
Comment on that in that.
Here, Al.
Hello? Hello?
Oh,
Well, you can hear me.
No, it'll work.
Here, I'll just get closer.
Okay.
What I wanted to say was that Dan's trip and my activities, back to 2012, there's a lot that's happened. And one thing that's happened is that grassroots is wonderful. Still, there is grassroots activities, and there will always be, but it also has its drawbacks in terms of some of the issues you talked about. Being able to use the trail, is it maintained and marked? So one of the big features of having the Appalachian Mountain Club, that's their bag. You all know about them. They have the trail experience, and they are managing the trail. And Denny would certainly say there are some failings, that nobody's perfect, there are some gaps. But compared to what I was trying to do, it became readily apparent that the mere success, 15 miles a year, we began to lose the first 10 to 15 miles. I was one person, basically, with a lot of help, but as Denny can attest, we began to lose the thing. So I think that part, I can't think of a better organization, even though nobody's perfect, than the AMC. So I think they have in place a lot of ways that we didn't have. So I shouldn't, reason I'm saying it is don't let that keep you from trying the trail and using just parts of it, day hiking. Uber is actually one of the most experiences that I've suddenly, at my age, I never thought I would be an Uber fan. It turns out that Uber is a wonderful way to enjoy the trail just a day, just by yourself. You can always get to the trail through public transportation. It's cited, so. But you plan to get there. The problem is you don't know when you're going to finish your day trip. And what are you going to do at that point? Right now, people are calling Uber, and they come right away and take you to where you can get on a train or a bus. So I didn't want to go at length. I also, while I've got the right here, Denny is an example of a force. And what we hope to do with these presentations is develop more people that, like Denny, he talked about the Charles River Lake, but also somebody, you don't know that the maps that were done wouldn't have been done without Denny's help. And there are hundreds of people that have been involved in that. And we hope there'll be more hundreds of people as a result of our 35. We hope to have every town library, not just in the Bay Circuit Trail communities. There are 57 towns in the corridor. Only 35 host the trail. But they're connections. And the Charles River Link is a perfect example. My hometown of Andover, the achievement of the trail is much more than just having the largest single section, which is 16 miles from Duxbury to North Andover. It's become a skeleton in town that has sparked the formation of connecting trails. Anyway, I got up on my podium.
Well, I just want to say another thing that is happening is that it's ever evolving. A lot of these individual towns are constantly working to get some of the parts, like Dan mentioned, he had a walk on the street. A lot of those towns are continuing to work to try and get some of the other open, wild places, I was going to say spaces, I know Dan doesn't like green spaces, so that they can move it off of the streets and the sidewalks. And I don't remember which town it was, but there was one when we did they had a number of the area on the street, and they said, can you come back, because we've gotten a lot of it off road now.
right.
So it's ever evolving and it's ever changing.
Well, you know, I mean, as you saw in this presentation, that there's a real emphasis on conservation and preserving land and protecting our natural wild places. That's one of the things that this hike really brought to me, was I hiked through areas that I could tell 5 years ago were woods, and they were suburban neighborhoods, so I was hiking down, you know, and I've got nothing against, you know, development. It's just we need to figure out a way to be able to conserve what we have left of the natural world, because we all know we all know the news that, you know, and I don't want to preach, so yes.
Penny, it seems to me to be an amazing challenge to try to establish a 16-mile link. What's the process that you go through? You just kind of plot a course and then get in touch with all the landowners, with all the cities?
Well, it's an interesting sort of a Lewis and Clark expedition. You know, when Al gave me this idea, he didn't really say where he wanted the trail to go, but I thought, first of all, people like to walk along water. So the Charles River, try to follow the Charles River as much as possible. The other thing was that Wellesley still hadn't had their network really developed at that point. So I leveraged off that to be able to get 7 miles of the trail down through Wellesley. After that, it was a decision which side of the Charles River to go, you know, what sort of properties are available. A lot of the property along the Charles River is privately owned. So I'm trying to hit, one of the things that Al told me was, don't try to go through private property, you'll never succeed. But even not going through private property, I had trouble just getting access permissions because of various different agreements that the butters had with properties. There was one case where there was a landowner that had a stipulation with the president of the nonprofit that no trail would go along her side of her property until she moved. So that was one of the reasons that there was a 7-year delay. But it was an exciting process because I suddenly discovered all of this open space all around. I started discovering my adjacent towns that I really, you know, I'd driven through my violence, but never really explored them. The roads and the open space and the trails. And yeah, it was a enlightening experience. I think that was the thing that really impressed me with the Bay Circuit Trails, to learn about your region. There's all these towns that are sprinkled all around Wellesley that you know nothing about. 38 towns the Bay Circuit Trail goes through. I had contact with every one of those towns, different town governments, different town people, different enthusiasm. So it's it was a very educational experience.
Yes.
I guess the Bay Circuit Trail and the Charles River Link, are they on all trails? If you use your cell phone, you can be guided along?
I don't know the answer to that.
No, it's not on all trails. The Bay Circuit Trail has their own internet. On a smartphone, you can pick up the map, you can find out where you are, and then you can follow the trail. However, there are problems with that because of location services, and it starts picking up Wi-Fi signals and so forth, and you have to be careful not to start co-opting the tracking process. For the Charles River Link, there's a Google map on the website, so that you can follow it there. But pieces of the Bay Circuit Trail, pieces of the Charles River Link are on these other maps.
Yeah, I live in Sherburne, and there is a section of town forest and trail goes through there. There is a clear cut proposed for that area that would have either encompassed the trail or been right adjacent to the trail. And does the trail have any political clout to stop that kind of thing, or any influence, or, you know, as a scenic byway or something to counter that kind of activity?
Can you answer that one?
Well, I can address it. I can't solve the problem. I think that I have a favorite word, which is pluralism. We have many issues to deal with as society where there are conflicting goods. And I think the clear-cutting issue has to be approached in a way that's not either or, although some people approach it that way. Some people think it's anathema, but then you have to say that Borland, who did the Green Revolution, you have to be really didactic and say there can be no culture of anything. So my particular, as an individual, I think in the sense of pluralism, you have to look and compromise. And I think that is an issue. It's more of an issue in this area. By this area, I mean the Bay Circuit, because the utility of treating your forests as a commercial enterprise is much less applicable. And I've been involved in others in the Bay Circuit. It's an ongoing thing. What is the priority of the state's management of its forests? It's a far different proposition in western Massachusetts, where the forest management is still a major industry and a contributor. But to me, pluralism says there are always going to be issues with conflicting goods. To say that there's always one or the other, it's just not realistic. But you have to listen to each other and compromise. So specifically, I think that the AMC and the trail does have some clout, but you have to exercise it, and you won't always be successful. I know that this is an issue that is important to people, hard-working bureaucrats, and one of them would be Bob O'Connor. He works for the state. He heads up the Interagency Land Committee, and we have really, sincere, but he gets deviled where people come in with a single issue and try and berate them, and he tries to answer them with facts, statistics, and so in my view, to answer your question, there is clout, but it has to be exercised, I think, gently and with compromise involved. And that applies to clear cutting.
Yeah, I
You
think.
may not agree.
No, I don't believe in clear cutting. I can't see any reason why that would be good for anything. But I would love to meet some biologists or ecologists that could back up facts about that.
But would you be against monoculture at all?
Yeah, because I believe in diversity. I believe in biodiversity. Yes.
One possible reason for clear cutting would be if the whole forest was all invasive trees.
Yeah.
And plants. That would be because that's against the diversity and so on.
Right.
So you open it up so that the native plants can grow.
I know, that's what I've been told. I don't know if I believe it.
I had another question for you.
Yes.
That is, have you considered doing something similar for the Mid-State Trail? It goes from north of Worcester, basically, what's the ski area up there? I can't remember the name. Wachusett, down to the Rhode Island border.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I have a file drawer, and I have like 6 months worth of work planning out my hike of the Long Trail.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the old knees.
Well, the Mid-State Trail does have its own group, and it gets service from the same feds that help the Bay Circuit. Charlie Tracy. So they're in contact, and I think that sure. I guess I have to say that I think one of the strengths of the Bay Circuit is its focus. It's not trying to solve all the environmental or recreational problems of trail systems in the entire state or even beyond. It's allowed it to be very focused in terms of the issues that it works with on just 35 or 50 towns in a specific area. And I think that's been an advantage, obviously. So that's a feature of the Bay Circuit. And I'm sure Dan would say yes if I asked.
Yeah. Well, I think that at this point, we probably should say that we're probably finished with the formal part of this presentation, but we will be here for another half an hour packing up. So if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to talk with you. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming out tonight.